Good evening, and welcome to the McLuhan Institute TMI Live number 64, NMNS from San Francisco to New York City to today, or something like that. Welcome. It's been a little while since I've done my TMI Live. It was a regular thing for a while, and then if I look back on it, number 63 was in May. Things happen. But here we are, back to number 64. I have a few things I wanted to talk about. There's a really interesting story about... Hey, my mom's watching, and so is my friend SAW. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. There's a really interesting story for those who might not know about how we actually know who Marshall McLuhan is today, how he became a household name. Marshall McLuhan in the early 1960s was rather well known as a scholar, a specialist in modernist poetry, specifically James Joyce, Yeats, T.S. Eliot, the moderns, Ezra Pound. He'd been teaching at University of Toronto since 1946, and his reputation was growing also as a communications scholar. He'd been hired by the NAB to do a major report in 1959, delivered in 1960. So he wasn't exactly unknown, but he wasn't a household name. And the story of how he became a household name is really interesting. Tom Wolfe goes into it a little bit in this book, The Pump House Gang, which is interesting. It includes this lovely illustration by Tom Wolfe. And the chapter is Chapter 8, What If He's Right? The interesting thing is that Marshall McLuhan became a celebrity not by accident, but by design. And in a day when a public intellectual, there's a term for it, back in the mid-1960s, there wasn't really such a thing. The idea that this English professor would become a household name, have an international reputation, was kind of ridiculous. But what happened, as I've gathered, is, and this was in the autobiography or the memoir of the wife of Howard Gossage. Gosh, I should know her name, but forgive me, I don't. And she tells the story that Howard Gossage was in bed one night. He was reading Understanding Media, The Extensions of Man. It had just come out in 1964. And he's going crazy. He's like, oh my gosh, this guy gets it. He understands what's happening with technology and society and culture and people. But nobody knows who he is. He's an academic. He's a college professor. And I want to do something about this. The world needs to know about this guy. I'm going to make it happen. So as the story goes, Howard Gossage gets on the line with Marshall McLuhan and says, Dr. McLuhan, how would you like to be famous? And then Howard Gossage proceeds to put things in motion to make that happen. Now, Howard Gossage was in San Francisco. He had an ad agency which was in an old pump house gang. Pump house number 1, actually, it's at 451 Pacific Street in San Francisco. I know this because I visited there recently and saw the famed pump house, which is now empty and for sale. And if you happen to have $2.3 million kicking around, it could be yours. Apparently there's a really nice big pizza oven inside it. In any case, Gossage was a different sort. They called him the Socrates of San Francisco. And a recent documentary being filmed has billed him as What If Don Draper Had a Conscience? And it's really interesting. Apparently, besides Marshall McLuhan, he was a very activist-minded person and had his hand in a lot of really interesting things. I'd recommend checking out there's a short couple-minute reel on the documentary in progress you can find on YouTube. It looks really good. Anyway, so Howard Gossage gets it into his head to see whether he can't make Marshall McLuhan an interesting but somewhat obscure, unless you're in academia, college professor from Toronto, if he can make him a household name, a leading figure in the world. So what he does is he spends a few $1,000s and takes Marshall McLuhan to New York City and spreads the money around, hosts dinners and parties, and gets Marshall in front of people. And all sorts of press starts to come out. Now, Tom Wolfe, as you saw from the Pompeius gang, wrote this article called "What If He's Right?" It's shorthand, "What If He's Right?" And it was first published here in New York, the Sunday Herald Tribune magazine. This is a copy of it from November 21st, 1965. Kind of a weird blurry photo on the front, but here it is. Here's the spread. It's a really cool article, and the wieldy title is "The New Life Out There, Marshall McLuhan, Suppose He Is What He Sounds Like, the most important thinker since Newton, Darwin, Freud, Einstein, and Pavlov. What If He's Right?" by Tom Wolfe. And he goes on to say all kinds of things here. Perfect, Delphic, cryptic, metaphorical, epigrammatic. With this even voice, this utter scholarly aplomb, McLuhan is becoming an intellectual star of the West. He is a word-of-mouth celebrity. And so, and it goes on, and it's an interesting read and everything, but after this, other people jump on the bandwagon. It's the turning into late 60s, 65, 6, 7, 8. Marshall held quite a prominent position, and when I look over the files for those years, they're stuffed with magazine articles about him, things by him. And Marshall was prolific before. He wrote mostly literary criticism and also communications articles, but this turns into a whole different arena for him, and it's very interesting. So when I was in San Francisco recently, I got to see the pump house where it all sort of began, and that was great. It also put me in mind of, well, it's interesting. I was talking to people in San Francisco, and today, the San Francisco of today is very different from the San Francisco of yesterday, obviously. Today, Silicon Valley is a technology hub for the world, and one of the things about that is that they have because Silicon Valley and San Francisco is all about the latest, the new, the best skills, the best products, the best technology. There's such a rapid turnover that people don't have the sense of history that they might otherwise have. What I heard from people was that there's a lack of continuity, certainly a lack of history, maybe even a lack of interest in history, maybe some sort of knowledge of the heydays of the hippies and all the rest of it. But very interesting to hear this, and Howard Gossage is really emblematic of an activist past of San Francisco when people had perhaps ideals, if not morals, that maybe are lacking a little bit today. But I really got a sense that that was missed. And it's interesting to me that, recently there seems to be another renewed interest in Marshall McLuhan. Elon Musk posted a photo of him on his Twitter or Instagram about 2 years ago. More recently, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez posted a picture of her Met Gala dress, "Eat the Rich," and on her Instagram she wrote, "The medium is the message." Donda creative Kanye West recently posted a 1967 photograph of Marshall McLuhan, very iconic photo. So there seems to be another little resurgent. It's hit the popular imagination again, perhaps, and I think it's very timely. Over to what I've been doing. When I look back at TMI Live 63 in May 12th, I was halfway through teaching UMI Part 2, Understanding Media Intensive Part 2, my in-depth, chapter by chapter, page by page, word by word, sometimes, exploration of Marshall's 1964 work, Understanding Media. And funnily enough, the third printing features a cover designed by Howard Gossage. If you look in on the inside cover, it says Jacket Margaret Larson / Howard Gossage right there. That's kind of cool. Light bulb, Understanding Media. So I've been teaching Understanding Media. I was in part 2 back then. Now I'm finished. Well, I'm a quarter of the way through part 3. It's turned into a bit of a beast. Here's my files on it. Each of these is a single class. And each class is like 3 hours. I'll have near 100 hours of material when I'm all done. And eventually I'll get around to editing all together and making the package available, because I really can't imagine doing the live thing again. 3 hours a week is a lot on it. But during this trip to San Francisco, I've been thinking what next, wondering what to do. There seems to be a lot of interest in the McLuhan studies, and part of my mission with the McLuhan Institute is to make McLuhan studies accessible. That's why I'm speaking to people on Facebook Live, and then it goes onto the YouTube channel. That's why I operate on Twitter and Instagram. That's why I'm sitting in this library and trying to find ways to bring it to the world, because I think more than ever we need to understand media. And what I'm interested in McLuhan work is the tools that Marshall McLuhan and my father Eric McLuhan left behind to help us do just that. So my job, as I see it, is to gather these tools and bring them to everybody, including myself, to use. So I thought about the next course to do, but teaching, while I love it, is not for everybody. Certainly not everybody wants to sit for 3 hours and deeply read and explore Understanding Media. That's a bit of a horror for some people, I'm sure. And so I'm constantly thinking about how to reduce the minimum kind of little bits that you can profit from, actually learn something. And it got me to thinking about something that Marshall McLuhan did back in the 60s and 70s when he was teaching at St. Michael's College, University of Toronto. He held something every week called the Monday Night Seminar. And this was a really cool thing that he did. It was an evening thing, and it was for his students, but it was open to anybody. And oftentimes, you see some pictures from it. It's standing room only, all kinds of people in the room. And people who were dropping by, who were around, would come and drop into, oh, thank you, Antonio. Anybody who was in the area, if there was a prominent person, Marshall would invite them to come speak. And I think the way it went as a seminar was there was discussion between like a small panel, or maybe Marshall just going off on whatever, followed by broader discussion, questions from the audience. And I got to thinking that that would be a really great thing to do again. When I was in San Francisco, I was invited to a dinner, and it turned into a bit of a salon. Everybody sat in a circle, and I talked about what I was doing with the McLuhan Institute and Understanding Media Intensive. And we had a bit of a larger conversation about what's happening in technology with Senate hearings in the U.S. and is anybody really driving this thing, or is it just a free-for-all? And it seemed to me kind of this type of thing and this type of discussion was something that we really need right now. And that's not only useful, but it also can be educational. So I'm going to attempt to relaunch the Monday Night Seminar in my own way from here, from the McLuhan Institute. So then a new Monday Night Seminar. It's early days, so I'm working out how to actually make that happen. But it'll be Monday nights. I'll invite anybody who wants to join. I'll select a topic and I'll invite people to be on a sort of initial discussion, and then if we can make it work, invite people to join. And I'm particularly interested in having conversations that we're not having and having people in the conversation that we're not hearing, overlooked voices. One of the key questions I often ask in whatever studies I'm doing or just in life is what am I missing? I'm really interested in things that we're missing, whether it's because we're going too fast and we simply aren't going slow enough to see, or whether what it might be. But what am I missing? And Marshall liked to say, we don't know who discovered water, but we know it wasn't a fish. The imperceptibility of our environment is something which fascinates me. So I'd like to use the Monday night seminar as a way to explore something like that, and I think that will be the first topic. In media studies, in tech, what are we missing? And I think that will be the topic for discussion. I've got a list of people who I'd like to invite for the first one. Thanks for the thumbs up. And I'm not going to name any names right now because I haven't asked anybody, and so I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I'm really excited for it. One thing I want to do with it is use it as maybe an opportunity to continue some of the other work I'm doing here. And so a lot of the work I do is archival. And behind me here, you'll see a couple of boxes. These are filled with reel-to-reel tapes. And for example, so it's a 1/4-inch audio tape. Looks a bit like this. Oh wow, getting all the hugs there. Thanks everybody. So, and on the back here you can read it. It says McLuhan, Monday, January 22nd, duplicate, 3¾ IPS, something per second, inches per second, I don't know. Anyway, this is a Monday night seminar on audio tape. I've got a box of them. Who knows if the recordings, it says duplicate, who knows if they're already out there, but this is one of my projects for digitizing McLuhan. I've got all kinds of things in here that need proper archiving, recording, restoration in some cases, but mainly preservation. And the thing about media like 1/4-inch audio tape is they're not going to last forever. I do have a reel-to-reel machine upstairs, but I'm not about to thread this on. I wouldn't want to damage it. What I would prefer to do is there's some places in Toronto that do quality archival digitizing of tape like this, audio tape, and I'd like to get it out to them and get a quote to do it and fundraise for it, and maybe this is something we can use the Monday night seminars for. Yeah, exactly, must digitize these. So this is one example of that. Another one, I thought this was fun because the last TMI Live I did, 63, I talked about the box of speech notes I have of Marshall McLuhan's. Well, this is a crossover here because this one is a smaller reel, but it says Dr. H.M. McLuhan Commencement Address, St. John Fisher College, Rochester, New York, June 8th, 1969. And the interesting thing about that is I happen to have some speech notes of his from this very speech. And it's listed Rochester Talk, June 8, 69. And he's got a typewritten sort of set list of topics to speak on. I found a thing online from St. John Fisher College by somebody, Tim Madigan, who talks about that event, includes a picture here. So this is a picture from that commencement address where Marshall McLuhan received an honorary doctorate of some kind. I think it was letters or something. Anyway, this is a cool crossover of different media that I have of McLuhan Archive. I found another one here. Oh yeah, some of the tape reels are marked, some of them aren't. This one just says McLuhan cuts number 1 and number 2 plus Q&A. No idea what it is, what date. Maybe listening to it we can figure out. We can probably figure out more, but who knows what that's about? Who knows what a lot of them are? It's literally a box full here and a box full there of stuff that I'm just dying to hear. So that's the big news, is I'm going to relaunch the Monday night seminar, kind of reboot it, appropriate it for our own purposes, hopefully to have meaningful dialogues and conversations about what's happening in our world as a result of technology and culture. And not only that, but I'd really like to put an emphasis on strategies, coping strategies. What can we do about it? Because I think that's really what we need, is we need to, do better personally in our lives. And there's got to be ways to do that. So I'm very interested in that. I'm also going to take the opportunity to revamp my Patreon page for the McLuhan Institute, which I guess I don't mention very much, but there is a Patreon page for myself and the McLuhan Institute, which, looking at it, I started about 3 years ago. And if you want to sign up for that, that would be great. I am going to be redoing it because it's kind of all over the place. So the tiers and the rewards and pledges is all going to get remade to, be more intentional to what I'm doing. Because when I started it 3 years ago, I didn't know really what I was doing except building the McLuhan Institute, whatever that meant. I have a much better idea now. Yeah, someone asks where were the Monday night seminars happening? The new ones, I presume you mean. I don't know exactly yet how that's going to work. So I'm thinking it'll probably be a Zoom thing, just logistically to have many people in a conversation and in a working conversation, probably over Zoom, and then simulcast through my YouTube channel for the McLuhan Institute to allow anybody not taking part to simply view. So I'll have to rely on people better with technology than myself to figure out the ins and outs of that and make it a quality thing and all the rest of it. So I'm really excited about this. I hope you will be too. Feel free to spread the word. If you know people who might be interested in having this conversation, not necessarily media scholars, let me know. I'd love to hear it. If you have ideas for Monday night seminars, let me know. Please, would love to hear it. Follow the McLuhan Institute over Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and yes, the Patreon love would be appreciated. So, yeah, thanks for joining me tonight. It's really good to be back on TMI Live. I think I broke the ice again for myself. And I'll try and be back here next week to talk about whatever's happening over here. Thanks a lot. Good night.